Delete her from the deal records. Every file, every email. Gone. I froze in the hallway. The voice was Victor Hales, my boss, my supposed mentor, sharp and cold in the glass-walled boardroom. Beside him, the client rep nodded, unaware that I was the one who had built this $200 million contract from scratch. I'd spent 18 months grinding through midnight calls, clawing through legal red lines, convincing the client to stay when they almost walked. And now, 24 hours after the signing, Victor was scrubbing me from history. The award, the press release, the glory, my name nowhere. He didn't see me watching. He didn't see the folder tucked under my arm, the one holding proof of the side deals he'd hidden from compliance. Victor thought erasing me would be clean and quiet. But in that moment, I decided he wouldn't just lose this deal. He'd lose everything. I didn't walk into the boardroom. I didn't slam the door and demand answers. That's what Victor would expect, an emotional outburst he could spin as unprofessional behavior. Instead, I kept walking, my face calm, my pulse thundering. Back at my desk, I opened my personal drive, not the company network, the one Victor couldn't touch. Inside was every email, every draft, every late-night message proving I was the architect of the deal. More importantly, it held encrypted screenshots of the unreported consulting fees he'd routed through a shell vendor. Money that, if the client's legal team saw it, would burn this contract to ashes. I didn't copy them to a USB. I didn't need to. I'd already mirrored the drive to a secure server months ago, the day Victor first started taking credit for my work in meetings. I didn't know when I'd use it until today. Now, the clock was ticking. Back at my desk, I opened a fresh project folder on my encrypted drive, the one Victor didn't know existed. I started piecing the trail together, screenshot by screenshot, invoice by invoice. Every file he deleted from the shared server, I had a copy. Every email he thought was permanently removed, I'd archived it months ago. He was sloppy when he felt powerful, and I'd been quietly cleaning up after him for years. My pulse was steady now, no panic, no hesitation. The office buzzed with the usual chatter, but for me, everything had gone silent, narrowed down to clicks, timestamps, and patterns only I could see. It was like watching a storm form on radar. You can't stop it, but you can decide exactly where it will hit. And when it did, Victor would never see it coming, because the first flash would look like a normal workday. Until the ground gave way beneath him. That afternoon, I walked past Victor's glass office. He was on a call, leaning back in his chair, laughing like a man who believed the world bent for him. He didn't notice me slip a slim envelope under the pile of papers on his desk, an envelope he'd think was from legal. Inside wasn't evidence, not yet. It was bait, a carefully crafted mock-up of a confidential compliance review that would make him scramble, covering tracks he didn't know I'd already mapped. I wanted him paranoid, burning time, making mistakes. The more desperate he became, the sloppier his lies would get. I could almost see it, him unraveling thread by thread while still smiling at the boardroom table. That's the thing about revenge. You don't just strike once. You let the anticipation eat them alive first. By the time Victor finally realized the real hit had already landed, it would be far too late to run. By morning, the bait had done its job. Victor stormed into the office before sunrise, tie crooked, hair uncombed, a man who had spent the night fighting invisible fires. He didn't see me watching from the corner of the break room, coffee in hand, steady as a surgeon. Every move he made now was a tell. The sudden closed-door meetings with his pet lawyer, the frantic shuffling of files between drives, the whispered calls he thought no one overheard. I fed the panic without touching him directly, little accidental mentions in the hallway about audits, compliance sweeps, and legal reviews. Each word was another drop of gasoline on his growing bonfire. The thing about men like Victor, they think they can outmaneuver everyone, but once they start running, they can't stop. And the faster he moved, the easier it became for me to steer him exactly where I wanted. By midweek, he was unraveling in public. During the Wednesday team briefing, Victor's voice cracked halfway through a sentence, sweat pooling at his collar despite the icy air conditioning. I sat 2 chairs away, taking neat notes I didn't need, my face a picture of polite interest. He kept glancing toward me, as if trying to read whether I knew something he didn't. I made sure he saw nothing, just a calm, steady presence while his hands shook over the projector remote. That afternoon, I accidentally left an old audit binder on the copier, the one with his signature all over transactions that shouldn't exist. By the time he found it, 3 people had already flipped through it. His paranoia was no longer private. He snapped at staff, barked at IT to lock everything down, and started making mistakes in broad daylight. All I had to do was keep giving him just enough rope. Thursday morning, I sent him a perfectly innocent email, subject line, quick clarification, with 3 vague questions about a project from last year. I knew he'd have to dig through records he thought were buried. 10 minutes later, I heard his office door slam. By lunch, he'd called in his trusted assistant for a closed-door meeting that lasted 2 hours. When she emerged, her face was pale. Word travels fast in an office when a boss starts pulling people into secrecy. The hallway buzzed. I didn't need to push rumors. They formed on their own. The truth was simple. People could smell blood in the water. And when Victor caught the scent too, it wasn't of victory. It was of fear. That afternoon, I dropped a casual comment in the shared kitchen. It's wild how compliance is digging into everything lately. Just that. No names, no dates. The intern stirring her tea nodded without thinking, but by 3 p.m., 3 different managers were checking old files. By 5 p.m., I caught Victor shredding papers in the copy room. He didn't even look up when I passed, just kept feeding the machine like a man trying to erase a lifetime. The irony was perfect. Every document he destroyed only made him look guiltier. I didn't have to touch a single page. I already had what I needed. Friday arrived, and with it, the perfect storm. An anonymous tip, crafted in careful, trace-proof language, landed in the inbox of our industry regulator. Attached, a small sample of files that painted Victor into a corner so tight he'd need a miracle to escape. I watched him from across the open office as he read the email, his lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. Then came the phone calls, loud, clipped, defensive. By lunch, he'd canceled all his meetings. By 3 p.m., his lawyer was in the building. People whispered. Phones went silent. Even the air felt heavy. The weekend didn't save him. On Monday, the first audit team arrived. 3 suits with quiet voices and sharper eyes. They didn't introduce themselves to anyone but HR. By noon, they were in Victor's office, closing the door behind them. Through the glass, I saw him gesture wildly, his face flushed, the auditors calm and expressionless. I stayed at my desk, tapping away at a spreadsheet that didn't matter, while coworkers shot me glances like I might know more than I was saying. I said nothing. Silence was my weapon now. Midweek, Victor's allies began to vanish. The ones who had always laughed at his jokes stopped dropping by his office. His assistant took a sick day and didn't come back. Meetings went ahead without him. He was still technically in charge, but the authority had drained from him like water through a sieve. In the cafeteria, I heard someone say, "It's only a matter of time." They weren't wrong. Every step of this had been designed to leave him alone at the center of the blast zone. On Thursday, he tried to fight back. He called an all-hands meeting, attempting to rally the team. "These rumors are baseless," he barked, sweat glistening under the fluorescent lights. But his voice cracked on baseless, and the projector refused to load his slides. People exchanged looks. I raised my hand, asked a polite question that poked a hole straight through his denial. He stammered. Someone coughed to hide a laugh. The meeting ended early, his authority bleeding out in real time. Friday was when the outside world started circling. A competitor's HR director called me by accident to ask about some resumes. I knew it wasn't a mistake. Word of his troubles had spread beyond our walls. By the end of the day, 2 journalists had emailed me with background questions. I forwarded them to PR, smiling to myself. Victor thought the walls were closing in, but the truth was, the roof was coming down. The following Monday, the CEO returned from an overseas trip. 1 hour later, Victor was summoned to the boardroom. He didn't come back. His office door stayed closed, his nameplate gone by noon. People clustered in corners, whispering, refreshing LinkedIn to see if he'd updated his profile. I sat at my desk, sipping tea, eyes on my screen. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. At 3 p.m., an internal email went out. Victor has decided to pursue other opportunities. Everyone knew what that meant. I walked to the break room, poured the last cup of coffee, and stared out the window. A year ago, he'd tried to sideline me. He thought I'd fade quietly into the background. He thought wrong. This wasn't just payback. This was precision. And that call I'd received from the competitor? Let's just say it lit the fuse that blew his entire career apart.